Welcome to the exhibit of First Glances, full audiobook edition. Written by Aina Nightjar. What if the quiet corners of a museum held more than just history? What if a single glance, shared between ancient statues and awkward laughter, was the beginning of something unforgettable? This is a slow-burn romance for romantic souls. A story of sarcasm, secrets, and a love that blooms when two guarded hearts find home in the last place they expected, each other. Meet Quinn, a sharp, witty museum educator, and Nathaniel, the not-so-strange stranger who keeps coming back. Over 6 emotionally rich chapters, they'll spar with sarcasm, drift from banter to vulnerability, sharing stolen glances, trading teasing and tenderness, and discovering something neither planned for, but maybe always hoped to find. So grab your headphones, get comfortable, and let yourself wander through the halls where artifacts and hearts are uncovered. Let the story begin. Prologue. Some love stories begin with grand gestures. Others begin quietly. In museums, where the past stands on display, honored in stillness, and the present wanders through its shadow, searching for meaning. Quinn Donnelly always believed in history. She just didn't expect hers to be written between Greek urns and prehistoric bones. And Nathaniel? He arrived like a question mark. Quiet, thoughtful and annoyingly well-dressed. He came seeking stillness. Not a woman who could match him. Wit for wit, fact for fact, and heart for guarded heart. But some exhibits? They aren't meant to be admired from a distance. And some hearts refuse to stay behind glass. Most people fall in love in cities, in cafes, in the noise of it all. But this story? It unfolds behind velvet ropes and echoing halls, where love is fragile and waiting to be discovered, like an artifact of the heart. Chapter 1. The First Glance. A sneeze, a sarcasm, and a stranger in the Roman wing. It all began with a sneeze. Not the romantic kind. The catastrophic kind that echoed through the Roman antiquities hall like a war trumpet. Quinn Donnelly, a museum education coordinator with a PhD in sarcasm and a minor in eye rolls. She had allergies, a sharp wit, and a deep-seated love for anything encased in glass and roped off from the general public. "Bless you," said a voice flat but polite. "Thanks. It must be the dust from Caesar's sandals," she replied, blinking into the light. She turned. There he was, tall, annoyingly well-dressed, and staring at a bust of Marcus Aurelius like the emperor owed him a personal apology. He looked like someone who read Latin for fun and corrected the translations. "That's actually a replica," he said. "Well then, fake history's trying to kill me." "Love that." He raised an eyebrow. "You're not supposed to touch the exhibits with your nasal passages." "I'll keep that in mind next time I French kiss the Etruscan pottery." There was a pause. Then the faintest, slowest, most dignified smile ever attempted inside a museum. "Nathaniel," he said, offering a hand like he was still deciding whether handshakes were in vogue. "Quinn. You here to judge all the statues, or just Marcus?" "Only the ones that don't live up to their titles. He was called the philosopher king, you know. And yet I'm the one philosophizing about nasal hygiene." They stood like that, orbiting around shared sarcasm. She noticed he didn't carry the usual tourist gear. No fanny pack, no oversized brochure, no visible selfie stick. Just a quiet confidence and a vague air of having walked out of a Jane Austen adaptation. They should have parted ways. But something about his faint British accent and the fact that he had somehow found a tweed jacket charming in 2025 intrigued her. And he clearly found her funny. Even if his smirk looked like it had a 5-minute delay. Their conversation wandered from Caesar's questionable haircut to whether medieval tapestries counted as gossip columns. "I work here," Quinn admitted. "Education programs. School tours. Random people who ask if the Rosetta Stone is a restaurant." "I'm here often," he said. "It's grounding." "Do you come to all the grounding places dressed like a high-end librarian?" He tilted his head. "Only when I expect to be verbally disarmed by a woman who speaks fluent sarcasm." They circled each other like polite academic sharks. Neither realized they had just entered a 3-month-long dance around feelings, art, and the occasional Viking reenactment gone terribly wrong. Then they parted without making plans, each carrying the subtle weight of something unfinished, and the strange certainty that they'd remember this charming first encounter far longer than they could explain. So ends Chapter 1. But for Quinn and Nathaniel, the Real exhibit is just beginning. Coming up, Chapter 2, Fossils and Feelings, Sparks Behind the Plesiosaur. A week later, Quinn was leading a group of third graders through the natural history wing when Nathaniel appeared again. This time by the plesiosaur skeleton. "You again," she said. "You again," he echoed. "Are you stalking me, or do you just love the scent of formaldehyde in the morning?" she said. "Neither. Coincidence, or fate wielding a clipboard?" "I came to see the new plesiosaur skeleton. It's rather elegant for a sea monster." She handed a plastic dinosaur tooth to a 6-year-old and motioned Nathaniel aside. "I'm going with stalking." "Fair. But for the record, I do appreciate plesiosaurs. Their necks are excessive in the best way." She gave him a look. "You know most people just text. I'm British. We haunt institutions where the dead are behind glass. It's much more romantic." Quinn had a weakness for anyone who used the word haunt in casual conversation. Over the next few weeks, they crossed paths again. And again. At first, she thought he must be on some oddly timed VIP tour rotation. Then she realized she was shifting her own schedule just to catch him near the Viking helmets. Nathaniel, she suspected, was rearranging time and space, and possibly staff schedules, to make their meetings feel spontaneous. They argued about Greek pottery like it was the Super Bowl. They once fake fought in front of a janitor about whether the Triceratops deserved more respect. The janitor voted with Quinn. She made Nathaniel laugh. It sounded like a cough and a chuckle had a posh baby. He once quoted Chaucer to win an argument about the historical ethics of the display of mummies and funerary objects. She responded with an impression of a Victorian ghost offended by modern curating. One Tuesday afternoon, they ended up sharing a bench across from a diorama of a woolly mammoth migration. "Ever think they knew they were walking into extinction?" Quinn asked. "Maybe. Or maybe they just like to move forward. Even if they didn't know why." She stared at him. Was that a metaphor about relationships? He blinked. Was it? They sat in silence. Close enough to touch. Neither daring to. And so, another accidental rendezvous ended. No dates. No confessions. Just stolen glances, held gazes, and shared granola bars on a bench like it was all perfectly normal. So ends Chapter 2. Quinn and Nathaniel remain suspended. In a museum where extinct creatures aren't the only things that feel a little out of time. They say love evolves, and sometimes it waits. In the quiet between glances, in the breath between shared laughter, in the warmth of hands that never quite touch. Ever found yourself caught in that in-between? Not quite friends, not quite more? Then you'll get it. Coming up, Quinn and Nathaniel aren't quite dating. But every Thursday, the museum turns into their not-a-date backdrop. This is Chapter 3, The Art of Not Saying It, where sarcasm hides the truth, silence says too much, and tension dwells in every unspoken word. Let's begin. Every Thursday became their unofficial day. They never acknowledged it, but somehow they always met, intentionally unintentional, a deliciously unspoken ritual nobody dared to mark down. No calendar invites. No promises. Just a certain kind of always. Quinn would pretend she was checking on a rattling sarcophagus. Nathaniel claimed he was testing acoustics in the medieval armor room. And somehow, like magic, they'd find each other. Between coffee cups and cryptic small talk, something subtle and unnamed began to bloom. They said everything, except what mattered. Quinn always spoke with wry optimism. Nathaniel nodded thoughtfully, watching her. Not the art. She once mused aloud, "I like the ones where the edges blur." "Me too," he replied. Their words stayed safe. Their silences? Electric. Two hearts framed like paintings, both hoping the other could read between the brushstrokes, but neither daring to reach across the frame. Then one Thursday, in front of a particularly weepy Monet, Nathaniel asked. Do you think this painting is sad? Quinn studied it. It was gray, and blue and beautiful. No, she said. I think it's hopeful. Like the rain's ending. He looked at her longer than he ever had the painting. Like the answer he was really studying wasn't on the canvas at all. You're an optimist. Don't let that get around. I've got a reputation. Later that afternoon, over coffee in the museum's surprisingly decent cafe, the conversation turned. Quinn stirred her drink absently. You never say what you do, she said, eyeing him over the rim of her cup. I'm a patron of the arts, he replied smoothly. Occasionally useful. Mostly redundant. She smirked. That sounds like code for very rich and very mysterious. He tilted his head, amused. Or possibly unemployed and charmingly vague. She gave him an eye roll so practiced it could have earned tenure. So, basically, dating material. He laughed. I thought mystery was supposed to be attractive. It is. Right up until someone refuses to text back for 3 days and calls it being enigmatic. Ah, he nodded solemnly. The fine line between alluring and emotionally unavailable. She raised her cup in mock salute. It's thinner than museum glass. He only smiled. Curiosity finally got the better of Quinn, and she tried to look him up online. There was, surprisingly little. A ghost in the system. Just a few vague mentions of someone with a similar name connected to international charities, and one blurry photo that looked suspiciously like him at a ribbon-cutting ceremony in Luxembourg. She began to notice how people treated him. Deference wrapped in curiosity. Docents nodding like he was more than a guest. Interns going pink in the face when he passed. Once she overheard someone mutter, I thought he was supposed to be in Monaco this week. Quinn had a theory. He was either in witness protection, a vampire, or British nobility on the run from a duchess with bad fashion sense. 2 out of 3 weren't terrible. But still no date. No kiss. No confessions. Just moments. Long, aching, lovely moments, and a series of unplanned Thursdays, each one less accidental than the last, and each one more like falling in love. And that ends chapter 3. They haven't kissed. They haven't admitted anything. But something is unfolding, cool-toned as gallery light, yet certain as closing time. Because sometimes, the most powerful words are the ones we only almost say. In the next gallery, it's a night of elegance and electricity, where history isn't the only thing full of secrets. Coming up, Chapter 4, The Gala and the Reveal. Elegance, electricity, and a dangerous question. Let's begin. The museum's annual gala was a high society fundraiser masquerading as an art party. This year's theme, a night at the Louvre, but less pretentious. Quinn wore a black dress that made her feel like a Bond girl and smelled faintly of old library books. Nathaniel wore a tuxedo like he was born in it. They found each other near a display of Roman coins repurposed as hors d'oeuvre trays. You clean up nice, she said. You look like a dangerous question, he replied. They danced. Slow. Gently. But it wasn't just a dance. It was a fragile confession, wrapped in silence between their heartbeats. The music curled around them. They swayed. Careful not to break what hadn't yet been said. Close enough to almost say it. Everything else disappeared. No crowds. Just the hush between them. And the words they hadn't dared to speak. Spoken in the way her hand found his. And the way he held on. Just a little tighter. Eyes locked. Breath held. Something between them shifted. People watched them like a Netflix series about forbidden romance and perfect lighting. Halfway through a waltz, a woman with a satin opera scarf leaned over and whispered, Isn't that Prince Nathaniel of Adveria? Quinn nearly tripped. Sorry, what now? Nathaniel caught her. Are you all right? Sure. Just processing. Prince. He sighed. It was supposed to be a secret. You told me your favorite dinosaur was the one with the neck frills, and you left out the heir to a minor European throne bit? He looked sheepish, which was impressive for a man in Armani. I wanted you to like me for me. She blinked. That's either the most hallmark thing I've ever heard, or the opening line of a political scandal. The music swelled, graceful and unaware, flowing on, indifferent to the storm unfolding between them. He looked at her like nothing else in the room mattered. I'd give up the crown. I just didn't want to give up meeting someone who doesn't care about it. Quinn didn't respond. Not right away. Because deep down she did care. But not for the reason he feared. And that was Chapter 4. The night they stopped pretending their connection was accidental. Where chandeliers burned, and so did the truth. Quinn came looking for answers. Nathaniel gave her a crown-shaped complication. Did you see the reveal coming? What would you have done in Quinn's heels? Tell us in the comments below. We're reading them all. Coming in the next chapter, silence speaks louder than titles, and a tiny Victorian tea room becomes the stage for something long overdue. Quinn's been dodging fate and one very charming prince, with sarcasm and scheduling spreadsheets. But when hearts have been meeting halfway for weeks, something's bound to give. If you're here for heart-bearing honesty, you're in the right exhibit. Chapter 5, The Declaration Exhibit. I'd rather be yours. Let's begin. She avoided him for a week. She buried herself in work. She reorganized the museum's entire schedule. She even considered dating a taxidermist named Doug. But nothing felt right. Then she found him. In her favorite place. The tiny Victorian tea room diorama. The fake biscuits. The doll-sized teapot. He was staring at it like it could explain the universe. You're mad, he said without looking. I'm confused. Why hide it? He gestured to the tiny tea set. Because I finally met someone who didn't care about all that. Who argued with me about sarcophagi and fed me gummy bears behind the T-Rex. I should have told you. But every time I tried, I thought it would break this. Whatever it is we have. You're ridiculous. And smitten. And a prince. Technically. I renounced most of it for a quiet life. You make it feel meaningful again. She stared at him. The prince who wore museum badges like they were medals. Who debated the merits of bronze casting at 9 p.m. Who might maybe love her. She stepped closer. You made it harder by being perfect, you know. Smart, funny, weirdly knowledgeable about Roman plumbing. Most people find that off-putting. Most people aren't me. That made him turn to face her fully. Quinn, I want something real. No titles. No palaces. Just exhibits and your terrible dinosaur puns. So, she said with a sly smile, stepping even closer, you still think Marcus Aurelius was overrated? Absolutely. But you're not. She smiled. You're a prince. I'd rather be yours, he said. He hesitated for a heartbeat, then whispered, I love you, Quinn. Her breath caught, warmth blooming in her chest. I love you too, Nathaniel, she whispered. Both a confession and a promise. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, everything else fell away, leaving only the profound certainty of the love that had grown between them. Then, without another word, she rose onto her toes. Hypnotized by the intensity of his gaze, the fire that had burned quietly for weeks. He met her halfway. Their bodies obedient to what their words had finally caught up to. Arms wrapping around her with a tenderness that spoke of patience and waiting. She melted into him. Heart pounding, breath catching. And when their lips finally met, it was fierce, tender, and utterly consuming. Like the final line of a story that had taken its time getting there, but always knew its ending. And right there in that tea room, where make-believe finally gave way to something unmistakably real. It was, without question, better than any royal ball. A docent passed by and muttered, finally. And that was Chapter 5. Team Quinn or Team Nathaniel? Who needs to make the next move? What's your favorite moment so far in Quinn and Nathaniel's story? Tell us in the comments below. We're reading them all. This chapter is for museum romantics, hopeful hearts, and anyone who believes in love that feels like home. Let's begin. Chapter 6. The Permanent Collection. Forever After Artifact. In a museum that held eons of history, Quinn and Nathaniel had only needed a few Thursdays to make some of their own. He wasn't meant to stay. But love changed the map. Thursday coffees turned into months. Sarcasm into trust. Exhibits into memories. And somewhere between fossil wings and tea room confessions, he discovered something worth choosing. Not as a pause in his story, but the very start of a new one. He came looking for stillness. The museum offered stillness. Not the lonely kind, but the kind where nothing asked anything of him. Until Quinn did. With her sarcasm. Her honesty. Her granola bars. The museum was meant to be a pause, a quiet detour before returning to a life mapped out in formal dinners, diplomatic smiles, and obligations he never quite chose. But the quiet turned into comfort. And comfort turned into her. There were expectations waiting. Titles, obligations, a perfectly pressed future. But none of it felt as real as Quinn's laughter echoing off marble columns, or the way the museum lights caught her eyes when she was talking about extinct birds like they were old friends. So Nathaniel stayed. No royal duties. No grand entourage. Just a steady job in the acquisitions department, a cozy flat above a bakery, and daily lunches with Quinn. Because somewhere between historical exhibits and Thursday coffees, he found something he hadn't expected. A life that felt like his own. They debated art and sculpture placements like seasoned curators, their playful bickering echoing through the quiet halls. They shared secret kisses beneath the Egyptian wing's vaulted ceilings. Once they even got caught making out behind the animatronic saber-toothed tiger. An exhibit as fierce as their spark. And then one unforgettable evening, during a private after-hours tour, Nathaniel dropped to one knee beside the woolly mammoth, its acrylic eyes watching over them like a witness to their love. Before he could finish his carefully rehearsed proposal, Quinn's laughter and tears spilled out as she said yes. Their wedding was a dream woven from history itself. In the Roman courtyard, surrounded by centuries of artifacts, friends, family, and the silent witnesses of the past. Sometimes, Quinn still sneezed in the Roman wing, an old allergy she could never quite shake. Nathaniel's response was always the same. A fond, familiar blessing, a gentle smile, and a kiss that made everything feel timeless. Their story became part of the museum's serendipitous magic. An exhibit in motion, not sealed behind glass, but held in memory, in laughter, and in something gently approaching forever. And as the woolly mammoth stood watch, still and steadfast, the exhibit stayed open. For love. For wonder. And for all the moments still waiting to be discovered. The end. That was Chapter 6, the final chapter of this story. Some encounters are passing exhibits. Glimpsed once, then gone. But others? They belong in the permanent collection. Enduring, quietly powerful, and returned to often. Every love story has its gallery. And if you've made it this far, you're already part of the exhibit. What's the most memorable artifact in your love gallery? And which moment in Quinn and Nathaniel's journey stayed with you the most? Don't miss the next book. Tap the bell and subscribe so you're first in line when the next chapter of love begins. Thank you for wandering these museum halls with us. We'll see you in the next gallery, where another story is waiting in the playlist.